For more than a decade, the United States has had the highest incarceration rate in the world. In fact, the USA has just 5% of the world's population and 25% of the world's prison population. And American taxpayers spend an astounding $70 billion on correctional services annually. What's wrong with this picture? I'm Mike Wallner in Los Angeles. Let's take it full frame. Tim Robbins has enjoyed Hollywood success both in front of and behind the camera. In 2004, he took home both the Golden Globe and the Academy Award for his supporting role in Mystic River. And he received numerous nominations and widespread critical acclaim as the writer and director of Dead Man Walking, one of the most memorable films of the 1990s. Tim Robbins has also delivered iconic performances in blockbuster films that are sure to stand the test of time.
Where are you taking me? Where am I?
Where do you want to go?
Home.
This is your home. You're dead.
I'm not dead.
What are you then?
I'm alive. Can we talk about something other than Hollywood for a change?
Yes.
We're educated people.
There are places in the world that aren't made out of stone. There's something inside that they can't get to, that they can't touch. It's yours. Talk about it. Hope.
Maybe one day you wake up and you forget what it's like to be human. Maybe then it's okay.
You're not making any sense.
In addition to balancing his acting and directing careers, Tim Robbins also devotes his time to the Actors Gang Prison Project, an innovative 8-week acting workshop that brings classes directly into California prisons. Led by Robbins, this arts rehabilitation program encourages inmates to gain a better understanding of their emotions. By doing so, it enables them to develop interpersonal and communication skills that foster tolerance and nonviolent expression.
It's very, what's the word I'm looking for? Extraordinary. It's making me feel extraordinary.
I have anxiety, so it's forcing me to dig real deep within myself and learn to just stand in the discomfort and know it's going to be okay.
We put on a mask so people don't realize, what we're really feeling. And this, to me, I love this class. It's helped me a lot.
I'm greedy, and it's payday, and I want all your money right now.
I'm Capitano. I win wars. I fight battles. I destroy enemies. These townmen don't got nothing on me.
Right away, Max, right away.
I hit him with this. In the class, you learn that the experience in life is we're all going to be mad, we're all going to be sad, we're all going to have moments of emotions. But what do you do with that emotion, Sometimes the best thing to do is the exact polar opposite.
It taught me to open up and not be afraid to reach out to another human being.
It's been liberating, even though we're not out there in the streets. I'd like to say thank you for this opportunity, because 39 years being, I've never seen nothing like this. And it's been a blessing for me, and a blessing to be able to do it and share with them, with everybody, and to share with y'all. Thank you. Thank you so very much.
I recently sat down with Tim Robbins here in Los Angeles to discuss his commitment to the prison project and the long-term impact these unique rehabilitation programs can have on recidivism rates among former inmates. Tell me about the prison project.
Well, about 8 years ago, an actor in my company named Sabra Williams, she was relatively new to the company at the time, came to me and asked me if she could start a prison project. And we didn't have one, so I said, go ahead. And she had worked in England in prisons, and she had a suspicion that the work that we do at the Actors Gang, the discipline, the rigorous attention to physicality and emotional honesty, would translate into something that would be beneficial towards inmates in prison. And so I gave her some money to start a pilot program, and found out that, in fact, we stumbled into something quite effective and essential, something that the head of the Department of Corrections of California has called cognitive therapy, which is that it finds a way, within the course of this work, the inmates find a way towards a more productive way to deal with their emotions. In fact, one of the things that's overlooked in rehabilitation at large is the idea that there's a big connection between the inability to deal with emotions and crime. And in fact, most of the people that we've worked with are in there for reasons that have something to do with an inability of controlling emotions. And so this work, its rigorous nature, demands that the people that participate in it are able to be facile enough with their emotions to be able to shift them in a moment, as happens in life. And so what we wind up doing is these exercises in improvisation with the inmates, starting with a base of the commedia dell'arte, telling them about the characters. They choose characters, they put on masks, makeup, to take them away from themselves, and to give them a kind of a buffer zone, a place where they can express emotions honestly and with intent and energy, but not be talking about themselves. So in other words, they're expressing the emotions and the fears and joys of these characters. So once they do this, we start into an improvisation, and inevitably someone will come in a state of anger, and another person will come in a state of anger. And our first rule that we teach them before any of the other rules is that you cannot touch the other actor. You have to, that physical space is sacred, and that you never reach out and grab someone or hit them or caress them or anything. So we have a problem if two people are in a state of anger, so we encourage them, because there's no real scene there other than a fight, and so we encourage them to choose a different emotion in response to anger in the improvisation. And over the course of 8 weeks, they come to understand that yes, they can actually choose a different emotion in the face of aggression. They can choose to avoid a confrontation by controlling their emotions. We do it in a fictional arena, but it's not that difficult for them to apply it to their real life and the real situations that are in front of them.
You know, you said state of anger, and I think one of the people who went through the program actually wrote that was the only emotion he could tap into. I mean, it's the only emotion he knows. And it's not just anger. It's, you know, as I think about it, I mean, maybe I'm leaping too far, but I think one of the things is empathy. You know, that they're not empathetic generally. I mean,
they're not. It's not encouraged, certainly.
Yeah.
I mean, anger is the predominant emotion in a prison. I mean, if you go out in any prison yard, you're going to see people looking at each other with "Don't come near me. I'm tough." Kind of. That's what they're putting out. You can't express fear on a prison yard, or you're dead meat. You can't express sadness or happiness. Anger is the one predominant emotion that's in the prison. And so after some work with us, these guys come to understand, and they've told us directly, what we understand from this work is that we're actually wearing a mask on the yard. We paint our faces in here, but the real faking is going out on the yard, because we're not angry, aggressive people. That's not who we are. Some of us have done stupid things to get here, but we, as a human being, as a holistic being, are not simply angry. No one is. And so to be encouraged to express these other emotions in this room where it's safe, they have revelations about themselves, about who they were. They rediscover the person that they were before they went to prison. They come to understand that the people that are still with that mask in the yard, or the prison guards with their own masks, they start to feel empathy for them. I remember this one guy came to me and said, I was looking at this one guard that they have, and everyone doesn't like him because he's someone that, calls them names and puts them in their dormitories early and takes them out late and does spot inspections. He was just such an aggressive guy. And everyone deals with it as they have to deal with it in prison. But one guy came to me and he says, listen, I was looking at that guy the other day and I started feeling, well, what is happening in this guy's life? What is his home life that he comes into work every day with such an angry attitude towards us? And that's empathy. That's him understanding and forgiving the person that's making his life miserable. And that kind of blew my mind. That was when I realized this work really is something that can go very deep with these people and have real tangible results. They also find ways to diffuse aggressive situations. Guy gets in some guy's face. He comes to class, he says, this guy got in my face on the yard. 2 months ago, I would have, gotten into it with him. He says, I looked at this guy and he looked like one of the characters from the Commedia dell'arte and all I could do was laugh. And it totally diffused the situation. And later, in the yard, that same guy that was being aggressive with him went like that to him.
One of the things your friend told us was that you have one person, and maybe you can tell me some more anecdotes along this lane, who's been in for 39 years, incredibly timid, just went before the parole board, now has a date for release. So can you tell me some of these stories? Because I'm sure you must have heard tons of them where you've made an impact like that.
We ask that all of our classes be integrated across racial lines, gang lines. And so what we have is we have emotional bonds being formed in that room that are deep, profound, and true. And we have the guys tell us again and again that the bonds I have made in this room are far more powerful and important and significant to me than any gang ties I've had in the past, any ties I've had superficially to racial, across racial lines. So it has this profound impact. They understand that they all are sentient human beings that are capable of emotions, and they are legitimate to express. And once they have the freedom to do that, their lives effectively change within the prison because they are being told through this workshop that their lives matter. And so they become different people to their family members that are visiting, and they become more active in seeking out how to make bonds with people that they have been avoiding for years in prison. And it can effectively change the entire culture of the prison. And we got to know this by this one particular prison, Norco, which didn't have any programs but ours for 3 years. And within that 3 years, we went from struggling to get 20 guys into a room to a waiting list of 200, and the guards and wardens saying that that section of the prison has effectively changed their culture about how they deal with them with each other. That's achievable. And that particular guy you talk about, through these exercises, being able to look in someone's eyes and express an honest emotion, when he went before the parole board the next time, he could actually look them in the eyes and be sincere and tell them his truth. Whereas before, being blocked off, wouldn't you not trust someone that is coming into you and talking to you like this? And so it helps. It helps not only with that, the guy is getting released because of that, but also when you're out there and you're dealing with people in your life or you're looking for a job. One of the most important things is to be able to look someone in the eyes and tell them, I'm never going to be late, I'm going to do a great job for you.
Let me ask you about what it's like, because a lot of people, they don't spend time in prisons, but I've been in prisons and interviewed inmates, and people don't have a sense of what it's like, even as a free person, to walk in, that kind of suffocating, dark feeling as you walk in there, and just all the negativity. What's it like to go in there? And you must see this with the first time they come in. This is stupid.
Yeah.
And then at some point, the light switch goes on and they say, this is special. I mean, they acknowledge it.
Right.
What's that like for you?
Well, the first time I went into prison was when I was doing Shawshank Redemption. I took a tour of the facility that was close to the one that we were shooting in. And I spent a little time in there talking to prisoners and spending a little time in solitary and talked to the prison guards. And I came to understand that something was very wrong with the prison system. And that came from straight up Republican prison guards in Ohio, who already understood in the early 90s that this system was going to fail. That we were putting nonviolent offenders in with violent offenders. For short sentences, their ability to get into GED programs or job training programs was nil. We were essentially keeping them in prison for a year and a half, and what they called it was crime school. That those nonviolent offenders will come out hardened criminals. So many years later, well, not after that, I became aware of the Louisiana system in Dead Man Walking, spent some time in Angola. And I had the good fortune to meet and become friends with Sister Helen Prejean, who wrote the book Dead Man Walking. And she said something to me that had a deep impact, which was that, you know, we think of prisons, we don't think of prisons. We put people away and we don't want to think about what we're doing to them in there or what we're depriving them of. We just kind of want to, they're like society's waste and we just want to throw them away. And she said to me that every man is worth more than his worst day or his worst act. And prisons are filled with people who made bad decisions, had terrible chemistry, as Kurt Vonnegut would say, bad chemistry in the body at the time, whether it was drugs or awful diet or deprivation of sleep or unregulated medication. This is not excusing any act. This is essentially saying that there's more to a human being than the one thing that they did that wound them up in prison. That's not to say that they shouldn't be in prison, but it's how we treat them in prison that matters. So when I first started doing this work, I still had, you know, trepidations about going in, and my big fear was that there'd be some meathead that thinks it would be cool to shank Shawshank, you know, and so, you know, make his name. And quite frankly, that was an anxiety that I came to understand was ridiculous. I came to understand that because there's such a lack of programs in prison, that someone walks through those doors to try to figure out a way to help them, they're going to protect them. They're not going to be aggressive towards them. But I don't have any anxiety going into prison anymore. In fact, I feel really blessed to be able to go inside and work with these people, and I feel really amazingly inspired when I leave.
Why is improv so important?
The first rule of improv is yes and, never deny. Someone makes a proposal, yes and. The other great rules of improv are be generous with your proposals. In other words, find a way to say something that makes something happen. The no denial thing is really important because that's diametrically opposed to the culture of prison. It's no, 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 no. Whereas here it's yes and, yes and, yes and, yes and. Reinforce what your partner is doing. Be generous to the partner on stage. Figure out a way to make that person better. And that's what I find is most inspiring about seeing the inmates work in an improvisational way. And plus, anything can happen. So what happens in improv? You come to understand how wild some of these guys' imaginations are. Some of the proposals they make are, whoo, you know, what? And yes and. And when we're working with them, it's yes and. We have certain rules, couple rules. No gang signs, no mimed weapons. We don't solve problems that way on stage. No weapons. And it's funny to see some guy go like this and we're like, It's like, oh, yeah, sorry. You know.
That's the fallback position, I guess.
Yeah, drop that weapon. Oh, yeah, sorry. I got nothing. I don't have none.
What about rules of engagement? Because there has to be you've got to create kind of your own wall, don't you? I mean, because you don't want to get too friendly with these guys.
Yeah, we at the start in the contract that they sign, they agreed to not try to contact us outside of prison when they get out. That this is, and we make them understand and we make our teachers understand. This is not about developing friendships. This is not about hearing their story about why they got there and how wronged they were. We don't want to hear it. We're here to do the work. We don't want to know what they did. We don't. It's irrelevant to us what crime they committed. We have a very strong belief that the work will help, and that's what matters. You know, from time to time, someone will come up and try to engage you in a conversation and about something that's going on. We just say, okay, yeah, we're not going to talk about that right now. We have to do the work. And then they can express themselves in the circle, but they have to express themselves to everybody. But this individual contact is discouraged. And it is tended to work. And it's something that I feel is a really essential part of the work we do. The other thing that we oftentimes, when we're in our own training, we ask ourselves, why are we doing this? And I think one of the things that is misunderstood about prisons and the idea that there should be rehabilitation, there's a kind of a weird feeling in people that don't know or haven't been to prisons that somehow these prisoners are living in some kind of luxury and that we're coddling them. Well, in fact, the opposite is true. And you would be surprised how few rehabilitation programs there are in our prisons throughout the country. And when we're asking ourselves, why are we doing this, one of the things we talk about is this is a public safety issue. As much as you want to forget about the fact that there are prisons and that there are people that we're incarcerating without rehabilitation programs, as much as you don't want to think about that, those people are getting out at some point. There's very few people that are going to be in there for the rest of their lives. We have 2 million people in prison in this country, and 85 to 90% of them are getting out. So the real public safety question is, don't you want those people coming out of prison with more tools to be able to deal with the kinds of problems that got them into the prison system in the first place? Don't you want people coming out that are not a threat to you? Because they're coming out, they're going to be in your neighborhood. It's as simple as that. So why aren't we looking at this huge issue?
How tragic is it when you look at the numbers? How many prisons are going up versus schools? How many people are sent off to prison?
Again, a statistic that goes across political lines. Are we content with the fact that the state of California has built 22 prisons in the last 20 years and only 2 universities? Is that the kind of society that we imagine the United States to be? I can't imagine that that's a left-right thing. That's just like this part of the whole mess that we're in with the inability to come to compromise in this country has a lot to do with the fact that we've been marginalized, both sides, by both sides of the media. You have...
We're that other side in the middle or something.
Well, you have your right-wing media that is demonizing the left, and you have your left-wing media that's demonizing the right. And so we're all fighting. And I think what we're talking about here is we're talking about the inability of people within this culture to be able to sit in a bar and find common ground like it used to be in the past. Yes, I like this candidate. Yes, you like that candidate. But where do we agree? We all agree we want better schools for our kids. We all want clean air. We all want food that's nourishing. We all want our old relatives to be taken care of. We all have compassion at the center of what we want to do. So why are we so divided? And my suspicion is because as long as we're divided, we'll never be able to affect the real change that would be beneficial to all of us.
I want to kind of talk to you about what you just said, because I think there's an irony there. You're talking about people sitting in a bar where they can't come together, and then you're working with people behind bars who are in this gang, that gang, this ethnic race, that, and they're coming together. Yeah. What about the irony in that? Maybe you need this program for the general populace too.
just make it a mandatory
yeah, exactly.
kind of thing. Yeah, that's terribly ironic. One thing that this program, this prison program, has done for me personally is it's given me a window into how real change happens. I've advocated in the past, throughout my life, for various causes. I've attended benefits and lent my name to organizations to help raise money. I think that's important work. However, it wasn't until I actually got on the ground and started doing the actual work that I came to understand what I can use my talents for and how that can produce a tangible change, something I can see, something I can feel. The big issues are still very important, but how do we get on the ground at the grassroots level and change these things? And I've come to understand it's not going to happen from the top up. It doesn't happen that way. The senators and the congressmen are not going to change things. It's us advocating, spreading information, and finding common ground with people that we're supposed to be divided from that is going to make change happen. I honestly believe that the reason we're fighting so much isn't an accident. I think it's something that is part of a design. And the only way to get outside of that is to reject the noise on both sides and go to the bar and find someone that disagrees with you. And you don't have to drink alcohol.
I was going to say,
you can have a ginger ale.
This program does not advocate going to the bar. You've said it now 3 or 4 times. I'm just going on the record.
Where is it now? Is it the coffee house?
Yeah, okay, there you go. The double espresso. There you go. But if someone's watching this and they're saying, you know, I think he's on to something, this is really cool, what would you suggest to them? Because, I mean, you're saying, look, it's in our power. In terms of getting a program like this, perhaps, in their state.
The first thing I'd say is please donate to a nonprofit called the Actors Gang, theactorsgang.com. Easily done.
And then go to the bar.
I would say that there's thousands and thousands of creative people in this country that want to make a difference, that if they could put together the A to the B to the C and find a way to volunteer in their community in some capacity, that can actually start to affect real change. Like in New Orleans, what happened after Katrina? A beautiful organization called the Roots of Music started by this guy, Derek Tabb, from the Rebirth Brass Band. And he got kids from all over New Orleans to come into the French Quarter. And he got a space. And these kids from rival gangs come in when they're in grade school. And the first thing they do, Tulane University students volunteering their time to give them tutoring to do their homework for the first hour and a half. Second hour and a half, rigorous training in an instrument. Last half hour, a meal. And they drive them home. So these kids are being empowered through art. They have, as one of the musicians said to me, you're not going to pick up a gun when you can play a clarinet. This is empowering them in many ways. They get to high school. They audition for the marching band. They're in. They've had 5 years of solid training from professional musicians. They go through high school as section leaders of their marching band. They get to applying for college. They're getting scholarships to college to be in marching bands. All affected by a simple volunteerism. saying, we got to do something about these kids. Because it's, when you volunteer, you're doing it for all the right reasons. And I would encourage people throughout the United States to use your talents, or even if you don't have a talent in an art, to volunteer your time to an organization that needs it. That's the way I believe that real change can happen.
You brought up New Orleans, and I was in the lower ninth after Katrina. There's a sign there that said, please, Mr. President, send help to us. Don't send the money to Iraq. And I know you were outspoken about Iraq. How do you feel about that now, looking back at time? You came out, there was a lot of criticism of your comments, but now looking at the state of affairs there now, what do you think?
Well, let's put it this way. The people that tried to make my life a living hell at the time, I haven't heard apologize. It was at the time quite obvious to me and to a lot of other people throughout the world that what was happening because of cooked up intelligence and lies. And then as time progresses, to see the people that participated in that lie being awarded for their service with medals, hard to watch. I don't know if there's been accountability for the deception that wound up really compromising our economy. I feel that strain of rabid, blind patriotism is still out there and has a consistent and constant voice that is expressing itself to the American people. No accountability there either. Those people are, in fact, have gotten raises and have been promoted by their networks for the last 10 years. So one could ask the question, why? But one could also just look at it and say, well, it's something I don't want to participate, and turn it off and watch shows like this instead.
Can't beat that. Tim Robbins, thanks so much.
My pleasure.
Coming up next, is there life after prison? Our next guest is living proof that second chances can have big payoff.